Hi everyone, welcome to the channel and thank you for hanging out with me today. If you're new here, hi, I'm Elle. I sound like another channel and that is because I watched that channel a lot. Anyway, in this podcast, I sit down and process my thoughts over a cup of coffee. This helps me keep my sanity intact, I guess. Kidding. But seriously, the very limited social interaction any of us have had over the past year has been very challenging, and communicating with others through digital spaces has been very helpful, especially for me. So today, I would like to talk about an article I read from weareteachers.com. Yesterday's episode was kind of all over the place, and again, I apologize for that. But I do have some thoughts, as I have mentioned, and I would like to add to it. And so, here are teacher ideas for supporting students who aren't doing any work at all. I mean, think about it. It's tough being a teacher sometimes because we do need our students to turn in their work for us to evaluate if they have learned anything. We do care. And I'm sure I'm speaking for a lot of teachers when I say that we really do want our students to come out of the classroom having learned something beyond the textbook. And but of course, learning things from the textbook as well, because knowledge is power and facts are important in life. But it's not everything that's important. And as I have mentioned, rote learning should not be the be all and end all of any school for that matter, whether it's formal schooling, informal schooling, or any other type of schooling. Learning should add value because that's actual learning. We should go to school not just to study, but to learn. And I hope you know what I mean by that. But here's the thing as well, test taking and measurement has its merits. And like in a class I took last year, so this is an education class, we talked about why testing is important. It's not just for the grades, it's not just for the scores, but it has actual value. I think testing gets a lot of bad rap because of how so much focus is given on them and how it is used to measure student worth, right? But it is important. And it matters because we want to see if students have learned what was taught and if they can use this new knowledge not just for inside the school but for outside the school as well. The type of test or measurement that we provide as educators, that is where the difference lies. And with that, we have to ask ourselves, and this is not just for teachers but for any parent and caretaker as well who look after young students and young children or any young persons in general, we have to ask first if it's worth evaluating. It's worth evaluating if the work we're asking students to do is meaningful. And by meaningful, we mean, is it meaningful to them, not to you? Do they see the value in it? Why they're learning something? Do they have an appreciation for why they have to remember certain facts, especially for a lot of students who have a hard time remembering things, right? And I think it's majority of people who have a hard time remembering hard cold facts. Yeah, I hope no one disagrees with me on that point. Secondly, we have to ask, do the students have the skills that they need to complete the task at hand? And if the answer to both, number one, is it meaningful? Number two, do they have the skills? And if the answer to both is yes, then we shift our focus on why they aren't doing the assignment, the test, the project, etc. With that, what can we do? So while the why isn't easy to answer, there are a number of things that we can do as teachers to encourage students to turn in their work, especially now that most of the things are done online and we can't monitor our students closely. So here are some teacher ideas for supporting students who aren't doing any work at all. Number 1, to mark it missing and ask what's going on. So kids have issues we aren't aware of. Compassion and understanding should be at the forefront of everything we do. And I remember this one time that I screamed at a student. I actually screamed at a grade 5 student because this kid was being unnecessarily disrespectful, and I'm so embarrassed that I allowed myself to react the way that I did. Usually I'm very calm, and I actually have a reputation for being the most patient among our staff from the last place that I've worked at. Yeah. But this kid was being unnecessarily disrespectful for days. And he was always screaming, throwing tantrums, and I was just at the end of my rope and I screamed back. So of course, I was pulled aside by admin and they sat me down and explained to me to be more compassionate towards the student because apparently his parents are going through a divorce, and it really made me reconsider everything. I hope you get what I mean. I was embarrassed at how I reacted, but at the same time, I was very taken back when I screamed at the student. He wasn't like that because it was my second year teaching this one student, and he has always been sarcastic, but not that level of disrespectful towards me before. And I reacted the way that I did, and of course I apologized for it, and that was that. So yeah, that's the first thing we should do. And now there are a lot of things that we don't see, especially with most of us who are teaching through the screen. It helps a lot. It goes a long way if we first ask what's going on. Hopefully we get a response. We don't always do, but if we mark it missing instead of grading zeros right away, then there's a better chance that our students will turn in their work eventually. Because getting failing marks one after another is very discouraging. I know what it's like, and yeah. You know how there are things realize that we realize that I should have known better when this or that happened, because we have come from that place in the past, but then we don't realize it until much later. It's one of those things, right? There are we should just sometimes we should just try, and this is outside school, we should just try putting our feet in other people's shoes and try to consider, okay, I do not see the whole picture. Maybe this person is being disrespectful, maybe not. Why not give them the benefit of the doubt? I mean, if you choose to become the bigger person, what do you lose, right? As long as you are as long as you are not a pushover and you do not allow people to trample all over you, you should be fine. Number 2, invite students to reflect on why they are not doing any work. This is very helpful, especially for older kids. So for us, we have to help them clarify and process their own thinking. It's challenging because I think it doesn't work if you directly ask them, and this happens a lot in movies. You know how the principal or whoever is in charge of detention gives their speech about you have to consider who you want to be. I think that asking directly does not work as well as it is intended. But I don't know. It's it's just my opinion. It's just my perception. But yeah, if not asking it directly so that you lead the students to think about it without directly letting them know that you are making them think about it. You get what I mean? So yeah, help them process their own thinking, and perhaps they will come to it on their own and decide on their own that they want to be more responsible. Number three, teach students coping strategies. And this is kind of connected to the first two. Not kind of, but it kind of wraps up the first two. So first we ask them, we try to understand what's going on with them, and then we ask them to reflect on why they are not doing the work that they are asked to accomplish. And sometimes, actually a lot of times, especially for younger kids, they just don't know how to process certain things. These may be emotions, these may be thoughts, and perhaps what we can do for them is help them with coping strategies. We ought to help students get focused, so especially with younger kids. And like I said, a lot of us are not there to help them in person. So if they are having a hard time focusing on the task at hand, and we give them strategies that could work for them, and the challenge here is that each person has their own coping strategy that works for them. There are a few that works for a lot of people, and then there are some that simply don't. So if something works for you, that could be the first thing that you could try to teach to your students. But if that doesn't work for them, try to look at other things that could work for them. I feel like I'm using the same words over and over again. Number four, ask students to write a weekly email and set goals. So in some not classes that I teach, but I know of some math teachers who do this. They ask for journal entries at the end of every lesson, not every class period, but at the end of every lesson or unit. They ask students to submit journal entries. They ask questions that are reflective in nature. After all, we want our students to find meaning in the work that they do, right? Don't we all need that? So I think it's not as easy when it comes to mathematics because it's mostly numbers, arithmetic, problem solving, hypothetical questions such as if so and so bought 72 watermelons, how many bags can he how many bags of candy can he pack, etc., etc. I mean, you have to think, why does this mother need 72 watermelons in the first place if she's not doing a business? Why are there 8 kids in her house? You know, those types of questions. Sometimes it's funny, but yeah, we have these hypothetical math problems that are not applicable to daily life. So we have to look for a way for our students to find meaning in the work that they do themselves. We can't dictate it to them okay, this is how it can be meaningful to you. We can suggest it to them, but people find meaning in things in their own way. We have our own experiences, and even kids as young as they are, there are things that mean something to them, and there are a lot of things that don't mean anything to them. So helping them find meaning in the things that they do, it gives them fulfillment, right? Yeah, I'm reflecting a little bit. So yeah, number 5, consider grading assessments, but not homework or other types of practice. So again, going back to some math teachers that I know, what they do is they give checkup quizzes, and these are ungraded. So checkup quizzes, as the name implies, it tries to see and gauge if the students have met the minimum requirement or minimum understanding per se of the lesson for them to pass the actual exam. So if a number of the students fail the checkup quiz, then that means that it's time for the lesson to be retaught. And with that train of thought, it reminds me of the class that I took last year. I mentioned it a few minutes ago. How test taking and measurement, evaluation, etc. These also help teachers see if the students, it's a cycle, right? So you teach a lesson, you assess, and then the assessment gives you data, and this data allows the teacher to see if it's time to move on to the next lesson, if it's time to move to a more difficult lesson, or if it's time to slow down perhaps, or if reteaching is required. So the end goal should not be just passing marks, but checking if the students are really understanding things that we want them to learn. And I think the problem is that as a society, especially in my culture, we put a lot of weight on grades themselves. And like I said, we equate this to self worth, that we miss the point of test taking. It's not for finding out who's smartest in the class, or if so and so is smarter than so and so, or if you're better than science than in math. It should be about data collection and allowing educators to understand what their students need. It should be about the students, and it shouldn't be about competition or making sure that your school ranks higher than other schools, especially for private institutions. So yeah, there's that. And then number 6, try positive reinforcement and celebrate students' small wins. So something I learned is that students beat themselves up over perceived failure, which again I should have known, considering that that's me as well. I think in the previous episode I talked about how I'm a type A personality, and failure, whether imagined or real, is a weapon that we use against ourselves. And even young kids go through this. And I've heard students confide. Students have confided to me in the past about how they feel like they're such a failure, they're failing their parents, their dad is going to be disappointed with them, their mother is going to be mad at them because of their grades, and they get so caught up with their scores that they don't want to try again. They convince themselves, why does it matter? I'm gonna fail again. And again, this is something that you see a lot represented in movies. Kids want to do well. I think all of us do. And sometimes they just need more encouragement. And something that I've found myself doing in my classes when my students get something wrong, especially on one-on-one classes, I say that their answer is not what the post question is asking, and I quickly follow up with a hint towards the right direction and ask them to try again. So instead of providing them with the answer that is being sought, I ask them to think about it again so that they arrive at the correct answer by themselves, for the most part. And then lastly, number 7, Even when you've tried everything, never give up on your students. This is very important. And it's something that we should give for to ourselves as well and to a lot of people in our lives. We cannot possibly understand all of the reasons why students may not be completing their work, and it's easy to just say that they are lazy or they're choosing not to do the work and that they should be punished so that they learn accountability and responsibility. The thing is, this is not really in the best interest of the child. And to me, personally, it's very challenging when it's time to forward feedback to the parents, and the issue is lack of class participation. I find myself sitting down and thinking hard about how I'm going to phrase my sentences. I mean, last end of school year, I delayed my class feedback because I wasn't sure how to tell this parent about how the whole year I have struggled, and that's the right word, struggled, to encourage his or her child to do the work. I mean, it's 5 sentences. Why are you submitting half a sentence? And it's every week. It's challenging, and you you want to say, is your child lazy? But I don't mean that. But it's tempting to go that direction, to think that maybe the student simply doesn't want to. And I think that even if that is the case, it's better to think otherwise. And I'm not saying deceive yourself or lie to yourself, but it's more of a reframing the issue at hand. And even when parents tell me, my child is very lazy, and then they start complaining about how lazy their kids are at home, I find myself paraphrasing for the parent and offering ideas on how to encourage their kids to, quote, perform better. In class, I don't comment about their home life, but I give them some ideas, I offer some suggestions, very vague suggestions, uh, on how they can encourage their kids to perform better academically. So there's that. This episode is much longer than the last one, and I feel like I'm more relaxed today than I was yesterday, and that's a good thing. I'm telling myself, you can speak well when you're teaching a class. It's fine, you can do it when you're doing these episodes. So yeah, again, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you all. I read all of the comments. They may be few and far between, but I really appreciate those of you who are very supportive, and I really find friends in all of you. Some of you I know in person, and some of you I've met online, and I have no idea what you look like, but yeah, I do notice, and I appreciate it so much. Again, this podcast is here, this project is here for social interaction, for me to be able to communicate, and I do hope that you like these episodes. I do enjoy making them, and I do hope that you do like hanging out with me. I'm very sentimental. So yeah, remember to like and subscribe, and if you'd like to support my project, I have a link down below. And if you are on Animal Crossing, I am on Twitter at Elfantine. Do interact, and I hope to catch you guys in the next episode. Bye!
Happy New Year! Holy New Year!